More than 7 years ago, I made a video called The Problem with Mythical Pokemon, which outlined all the ways that Game Freak had been sullying one of their most interesting groups of Pokemon, particularly in the years from 2013 to 2018. But something really odd has happened since that video was published. The number of mythical Pokemon that we've gotten since 2018 has absolutely plummeted, going from about 3 or 4 a generation to just 2 in the last 7 years. So good morning everybody, good morning, it's JPR, and today we're going to take a look back at the last handful of years to see if the mythical Pokemon situation has truly gotten any better. So in case you didn't watch that video, let me give you a very quick synopsis to get you up to speed. Basically, mythical Pokemon started off being an incredibly mysterious group of Pokemon that served to expand upon the mythos of the Pokemon world. Mew, for instance, was mentioned numerous times in the Gen 1 games, but was purposely withheld from the general public to grow the mystery, with the only way to obtain it being through a glitch. Deoxys was a powerful Pokemon from outer space with the ability to change forms, something that was completely unheard of before Gen 3. Darkrai counterbalances Cresselia and acts as a follow-up to her story content in Sinnoh. Arceus is the literal god of the Pokemon world atop Spear Pillar. Sure, there were a few who notably got barely anything in terms of story or gameplay, like Jirachi or Meloetta, but for the most part, the first 5 generations treated their Mythicals with a great deal of respect. But starting in Generation 6 and going into Generation 7, they started becoming more like free handouts with absolutely nothing attached, other than promotion for the next lazily written Pokemon movie. And I stand by that statement, Pokemon movies have not been consistently good since Gen 3. On top of that, they also stopped having any sort of a connection to anything in the game. Even Pokemon like Celebi, Shaman, Keldeo, and Genesect, despite not being included in the game at launch, all had locations and tidbits of information that tied back to them in some manner. Diancie? It's a mutation of Carbink, that's about it. Zeraora? He's a guy in a fursuit. Nothing in Alola is even remotely tied to him. Maybe the only mythical across the 2 3DS generations that even teased an in-game connection was Marshadow, who had its own Z-move in Zenith form, which hinted that it may have some connection to the origins of Z-Power. Maybe it being from the shadows was meant to be some sort of foil to Necrozma bathing Alola in Z-Power's light. But even with this very easy setup, they completely airballed it and gave us absolutely zero content for this guy. And when Zeraora looked to be almost exactly the same thing, that was what prompted me to make that video. But pretty much right after I posted that video, they did try something new with mythical Pokemon. Enter Meltan, a Pokemon that you probably haven't even thought about in the last few years. Meltan was first introduced at the end of 2018's Chikorita Community Day. When it was caught, it would usually turn into a Ditto, fueling speculation that Meltan was a glitch or a placeholder for something else to come. There was literally zero announcement surrounding it was just spontaneously shadow dropped into the game. And to be completely honest, this was awesome! This truly felt like it brought back those old school Pokemon playground rumors about Mew under the truck. Almost everybody was completely and utterly confused until a few days later when they finally came clean about it being a new Pokemon. In the age of the internet and leaks and everything else, this is about as well kept of a secret as they could have had. Unfortunately, the rest of Meltan's legacy is one to forget. Sure, it would be the first mythical Pokemon to evolve, as Melmetal was later introduced, who would also later receive a Gigantamax form in Pokemon Sword and Shield, but at the end of the day, it ended up being more of a reason for people to re-download Pokemon Go than anything. They were pretty shameless about it too, making it so that Meltan can only be evolved in Pokemon Go. If you transfer it to a core series game, it can never evolve, which is just annoying all these years later. It's also a bit annoying that Meltan and Melmetal didn't really get any sort of explanation or follow-up in Let's Go or Sword and Shield. They basically just exist in those games, and that's about it. Still, credit where credit is due, this may be the first actually exciting way that they introduced a mythical Pokemon in decades. I wish they'd stuck the landing a little bit better, but compared to the likes of Zeraora or Magearna, it was a step in the right direction. Fast forward a couple of years and we get Zarude, the lone mythical Pokemon from Generation 8. And unfortunately, this guy is very, very Zeraora-pilled. No story content, no side quests, no vague references from random NPCs. Heck, not even an in-game location that accurately fits it. It's the jungle Pokemon! Galar doesn't have anything that remotely resembles a jungle, not even in the DLC areas. In fact, Galar is the exact opposite of tropical. This guy would fit in way more as a Hoenn or Lola mythical. Was this just their way of admitting that they're never going to make an African Pokemon region? Because it sure feels like it. Pretty much the only positive thing I can say about Zarude is that at least its movie, Secrets of the Jungle, is actually pretty good. Which on that note, it's worth pointing out that as of making this video, this is the last Pokemon movie. Remember earlier how I said that Mythical Pokemon kind of just felt like they were being made for movie promotion and not much else after a certain point? So, is it really a coincidence that Mythical Pokemon had a dramatic drop-off after these movies stopped being made? Probably not! Of course, there's a reason behind this too. Secrets of the Jungle was originally meant to release in July of 2020, but was pushed back by that little incident that happened 5 years ago. Some of you may have heard about it. It ended up releasing on Christmas of that year in the middle of the ongoing pandemic. Because of this, Secrets of the Jungle became one of the lowest grossing movies in the Pokemon series and officially ended the yearly Pokemon movie release cycle. On top of that, the general Pokemon and media landscape has drastically shifted. Ash Ketchum's story is now complete, with it not being clear how the new protagonist would fit into the moviescape. Movie events are now largely redundant for marketing new mythical Pokemon, as the games can now distribute them via Wi-Fi or from special raid events. And not to mention that streaming services have more or less taken away from the cultural relevance of movie theaters in general. Which sucks. I want to eat my overpriced popcorn in my overpriced movie chair watching my overpriced movie among other individuals. Maybe I'm crazy, but I like the community feeling it brings. Speaking of which, I want you to be a part of my community, so if you haven't subscribed already, I would really appreciate it if you did. Thanks! Anyway, since Zarude and the unofficial retirement of Pokemon movies, we've only gotten one new mythical Pokemon since then, Pecharunt, who, if I'm being completely honest, is probably my favorite mythical Pokemon since Genesect. Pecharunt feels very much like a classic mythical Pokemon. It was excellently foreshadowed in the Teal Mask DLC, with it making a very small cameo during the story of the Loyal 3, and its body even rests nonchalantly on the countertop of one of Masui Town's shops. It's awesome, a new Pokemon hidden in plain sight. Similar to Meltan, it's there, but no official attention was brought to it until quite a bit later. And unlike Meltan, when it did get its attention, we actually got something out of it in-game. This is where I'd say the retirement of Pokemon movies was actually a good thing. If Pokemon movies were still releasing every year, I guarantee you probably would have gotten this entire thing as another generic movie story. But since they aren't around to lean on anymore, Game Freak actually had to give Pecharunt its own epilogue story focusing around it. And to be honest, it wasn't bad. Corny, yes, but at least Pecharunt became the first mythical in a long time to tick all the boxes. It was catchable in-game, it wasn't a limited time event, and it came with story content that actually related to other aspects of the game. Pecharunt A+. This is how all mythical Pokemon should be handled going forward. And speaking of going forward, Legends ZA gave me a ton to be hopeful about right off the bat with the announcement of Mega Dimensions centering around Hoopa and Mega Zeraora now being a thing. I mean, it's not the best design ever, but hey, it's something. And as it turns out, the Legends ZA DLC might be the most mythical Pokemon-focused piece of content we've ever gotten, as there are 10 catchable mythical Pokemon in this game, beating Legends Arceus, who I believe had the previous record with 4, maybe 5 if you count Fione. So we'll start off with the first mythical this game had to offer, Diancie. Diancie actually did get an event in X and Y, and by that, I mean a few lines of text from a couple of random NPCs. Even though Reflection Cave seemed like the perfect place for this Pokemon to fit in, they said, nope, we are not spending dev time on that. Anyway, Diancie now has a proper event in Legends ZA where you basically just look for it for a few minutes, capture it, and then get some brief information from Emma, where she notes that Diancie looks very similar to the Anistar Sundial, implying that it may be connected to the origin of Mega Evolution and the Mega Crystals you see around the city. Oddly enough, this may have actually unintentionally painted over a major plot hole from Diancie's movie where it just somehow makes its own Mega Stone at the end. If Diancie's body is filled with Mega Energy, I guess this actually makes sense now. And it makes me theorize that the sudden mutation the Pokedex talks about when Carbink turned into Diancie may have actually been the Ultimate Weapon's doing. After all, Mega Stones are already described as being mutations of regular evolution stones, so I wouldn't doubt it if a Carbink just absolutely got blasted 3,000 years ago. So Diancie got a pretty significant gameplay upgrade in ZA and a very minor lore upgrade. I'll take it. Next up, we have Hoopa. Admittedly, despite being the star of the show in the DLC, I feel like we still barely know anything about it. They end up just giving you your own Hoopa in the postgame, unrelated to Ansha's, and then just repeating the same prison bottle lore that we already knew about from X and Y, except AZ just had it in his hotel for some reason, so, yeah, not much of an improvement to this one, other than the fact that we can actually battle and capture it. Mostly because the true Pokemon behind hyperspace in this DLC was not Hoopa, but rather Darkrai. A mythical Pokemon who, ironically enough, doesn't really require any more lore or story to it. Its original games just did a good job with it the first time. Though this DLC's plot does feel a lot like it canonizes Darkrai's power from the Rise of Darkrai movie, where its nightmares are so strong that it can create its own realities. Honestly, Darkrai, you're kinda making me have to reevaluate my mythical Pokemon power scaling video, and I don't appreciate that. And of course, it gains a new Mega Evolution that looks like solar eclipse, I guess is what they were going for. Not the route I expected, but hey, he's a shadow, he can do whatever he wants. After Darkrai's defeat, the actual postgame is unlocked, where all the other Mythicals become available, including Volcanion. Hey, who turned off the lights? Honestly, I'm amazed at Game Freak's amount of effort to give no effort to Volcanion. All its lore still revolves around the equally mythical Southern Kalos, which is a relic from the beta build of Pokemon X and Y that didn't survive the final cut. And for crying out loud, they make you battle and catch it in a pitch black room with a blue rectangle! Do they hate Volcanion because he reminds them of deadlines and wasted potential in Pokemon games? Because that's sure what it seems like. At the very least, this game does offer an explanation for why Volcanion isn't in X and Y at all. Apparently, Team Flare captured it and accidentally sealed it inside of a hacked Pokeball. Fitting, given that hacking was the only way to get this sucker back then. But yeah, Volcanion, I think you're just definitively the worst mythical Pokemon now. Like, there's literally no saving you. Next up, Meltan and Melmetal make very unexpected appearances in this DLC, and that's about all I can really say about them. There's some little girl living in Melmetal's hyperspace dimension, and either Melmetal eats her, or she was a ghost and just disappears. Either way, I have literally no idea what Game Freak was trying to convey here. Maybe it's a metaphor for Pokemon Go's fanbase dying off, but still, these two remain a complete and utter mystery. Magearna, another Pokemon who received shockingly little lore in the Alola games, also shows up here, but likewise seems to leave us with more questions than answers. As Jet and Vinny just claim that they found Magearna in its powered down state during the city renovations. Which, honestly, if you told me that Magearna was supposed to be a Gen 6 mythical linked to the old royalty families, I would have totally believed you. It's way more believable than this thing just being found randomly in Alola. It already looks like a robot Diancie, just say that it was built in place of the real thing for the king's daughter. It's such an easy layup. But instead of giving us any further insight on its origins, they just say that the only way to wake Magearna up is to use a Megastone. Which, whatever, it doesn't make sense, but they needed an excuse to give this thing a Mega Evolution. Sure, whatever, you do you. Genesect and Marshadow also return here, but really don't get anything new, just little events where you can capture them. And last but not least, Zeraora is the final mythical to unlock, not counting Keldeo or Meloetta, who are completely optional. Finally, the mythical Pokemon who inspired my original rant, the Pokemon who had absolutely nothing for nearly a decade, it's going to get some... Oh, it has absolutely nothing, doesn't it? No lore, no explanation for how it got here, just random hyperspace stuff. Well, I can't say I'm too surprised. Literally the only thing here is that Karina says it's one of the strongest electric-type Pokemon. Dang man, if that's the criteria, then why don't we just retroactively make Tyranitar or Metagross into mythical Pokemon? It's gotta have more to it than just being strong and rare. So overall, I'd say that Legend ZA gets a C grade for all of its mythical Pokemon. I appreciate that some effort actually went into giving these guys real events where you could battle and catch most of them. That alone is a significant improvement from how they've usually been handed out. But, by and large, we didn't really learn anything new about these guys, aside from Darkrai, who is already a well-developed mythical Pokemon. I'll give them a pass on Genesect, Melmetal, and Marshadow, but Magearna, Zeraora, and Volcanion especially, they dropped the ball. These guys deserved so much more. This was probably their last opportunity to fix them until like 2035 at the earliest. Nonetheless, Game Freak has shown signs of improving Mythical Pokemon over the last 7 years. Yes, they occasionally hit us with some shenanigans like Zarude, or whatever the heck Volcanion was supposed to be in ZA, but at the very least, we are nowhere near that low point from Gen 6 to Gen 7, where it felt like every new Mythical were just wasted lines of code. But hey, what do you think? Is it over? Are we back? Somewhere in between? Let me know in the comment section down below. But don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you guys next time.